Wait, did you know that taking care of this one or this one can actually rewire your brain? I know. I thought it was weird too. Hi there, I'm Yvette, I'm a neuroscientist, and I am 6 months into a year-long journey to rewire my brain. I took a look at what is around me and what I find that are positive influences for me, and I pointed my finger on plants and my cat. So then I went into a research rabbit hole, and this video is the result of that. And so by the end of this video, you're going to understand why, well, this little plant over here might be the one with the most powerful tools for taking care of the most important animal in your life. I know, I'm not talking about my cat, but more on that later. So let's start with something that happens the second you touch a plant or pet an animal. Most people think the calm they feel around nature is just a nice feeling that fades the moment you go back inside and check your emails. But what if your brain is actually running a completely different chemical program the moment you make contact with a living thing? Well, here's the neuroscience behind it. The moment that you interact with plants or animals, your brain floods with serotonin and dopamine, which are your feel-good neurotransmitters, or chemicals. And at the same exact time, cortisol, which is the primary stress hormone, measurably drops down. And in order to prove this, researchers used functional magnetic resonance imaging, or fMRI for short, to track what happens inside people's brains during gardening activities. Participants engaged in sowing, fertilizing, weeding, watering, and I think harvesting over 6 weeks. And with each successive stage of these gardening activities, the scores for negative emotional states declined, all the way to their lowest point after the harvest. So, the more the subjects in the study engaged with plants, the more they cared for them. And as a result, their brain changed their neural activation patterns for the better. So, the next time someone tells you that talking to your plant is just weird, you can show them this paper or this video. Because, hey, we might be weird, but neuroscience backs us up. However, the chemical shift that I just mentioned isn't just making you feel better today. Actually, science suggests that it's doing something much more permanent to your brain structure. Which brings me to point number 2. Be honest, how much have you spent on anti-aging products this year? Well, what if I told you that something you might already have sitting in your living room is doing more for your brain's age than almost any of those things? Interested? So let me explain. Most conversations about aging focus on how many visible wrinkles you have on your face. But the brain ages too. And cognitive decline, which is the gradual loss of memory, is one of the things people fear most as they get older. So what does the research say about plants and animals and, brain age? A study looked at 95 participants aged between 20 to 74 from the Alabama Brain Study on risk for dementia, and found that pet ownership was associated with higher levels of cognition and larger brain structures. It was also associated with better processing speed, better attentional orienting, better episodic memory, and drumroll please, it was shown that owning a pet can reduce your brain age by up to 15 years. And owning multiple pets showed even greater cortical thickness, meaning more brain volume, particularly in older adults. And this is important because brain age, unlike our actual age, is not determined by how many birthdays we had. It is a measure of how efficiently our brain is functioning. A younger brain age means sharper recall, faster thinking, and greater resilience against neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's disease. I find this really cool, but after I read the results, I asked myself, why does caring for an animal make your brain younger? And for this, the researchers proposed several pathways for the results that they observed. They suggested that pet ownership enriches your environment, which directly enhances brain plasticity. It also reduces stress, which we know causes hippocampal damage over time. But mind you, I'll talk about it a bit later. It also increases physical activity, especially with dogs, and it provides social and emotional engagement. And all of these are independently proven to support brain health. And so, if you take anything from this video, let it be that the act of caring itself is doing cognitive work. To take care of an animal, you need to remember to feed them, walk them, groom them, take them to the vet. Basically, you need to plan ahead and read their behavioral signals. And all of this is active neural exercise. And on this note, the brain has to do this next thing in order to slow brain decline. Okay, I want to ask you something. Would you compare your brain more to a garden or to a computer? Well, most people walk around with this assumption, often completely unconscious, that the brain you have today is basically the brain you're stuck with. that your habits and your cognitive abilities are more or less fixed. Well, this is not the case. Your brain is neuroplastic, and we hear this term quite a lot these days. And this means that the brain has the ability to physically reorganize itself, forming new neural connections by adapting its structure based on your experiences and behaviors. And that is how we can do brain rewiring. And well, this is where actually plants and animals come in. Research found that regular exposure to green and blue spaces is consistently associated with reductions in anxiety and depression, and improvement in overall well-being across diverse populations and cultures. So, now, why does this matter for neuroplasticity specifically? Well, this is because your brain rewires itself in response to sustained, meaningful engagement. And chronic stress, which is characterized by elevated cortisol and constant threat activation, is one of the most powerful inhibitors of neuroplastic change. So, by staying in survival mode, you are unable to build new pathways. When interaction with nature consistently reduces stress and anxiety, it is directly creating the neurological conditions in which new learning and new growth becomes possible. Because every time you tend to your plants, every time you walk your dog, you are clearing the path for your brain to rewire itself. Because basically this little plant here is also a gym to your brain. And just like any gym, what you're really doing is training specific systems. Your brain has an entire attention network, and caring for living things activates it in a very precise, very powerful way. Attention deficit is one of the great plagues of our times. And this comes to no surprise, given the relationship we have with our phone. I don't think I need to go there, right? We all know where we are at. So, what can we do to rebuild our attention other than checking out our phones? Research found that pet ownership specifically activates the dorsal attention network, the limbic network, and default mode network in the brain. These are the systems responsible for planning, focus, emotional regulation, and the ability to infer mental states in others. Think about what it means to infer mental states in a pet. Your pet cannot tell you that they are afraid or that they are in pain. You have to watch and interpret what you see. And like this, you are exercising your brain's capacity for sustained empathic attention. And it doesn't stop here. For example, when you walk your dog, your brain shows increased alpha wave activity, which is the neural signature of calm and relaxed focus. Consistent with this is that when you groom an animal, beta wave activity increases, which is the brainwave pattern associated with active concentration and cognitive engagement. So, depending on what you need, whether if it is calm or being sharp, your interaction with your pet is literally tuning your brain to the right frequency. So, by now we have established that there are many benefits to taking care of plants or a pet. But there's one thing working silently in the background that, well, counteracts all of this. We talk about stress like it's just an emotion, something you feel on a bad day that passes when things calm down. But chronic stress is a biological event, and it is physically altering your brain. When you're chronically stressed, your body produces elevated levels of cortisol, and sustained high cortisol levels have a very specific and very damaging effect on the hippocampus, which is the brain region most critical for memory formation and also learning. In fact, chronic stress reduces hippocampal volume, which means that it reduces memory and reduces learning capacity. So, anything that reduces cortisol is protecting your brain from physical damage. And this is where the research on plants and animals comes in. A study tracked adults aged 50 and older spanning 18 years. The findings confirmed that pet ownership is associated with significantly slower cognitive decline in both executive functioning and episodic memory. And one of the key proposed mechanisms is stress reduction. Specifically, the decrease in cortisol levels and physiological stress responses that come from regular interaction with companion animals. The study also found that pets appear to buffer physiological responses to mental stress, including blood pressure and cardiovascular reactivity. And this does not only apply to animals. Research consistently shows that contact with green spaces reduces cognitive overload. Plants and green environments reduce the mental clutter, and in doing so, they restore the cognitive resources you need for problem solving and creative thinking. So, we've now covered 5 real measurable, peer-reviewed ways that caring for living things rewires your brain. But I saved the most important insight for last, because all 5 of these things point to something much bigger. Because your body is also an animal, the animal that you live in. And most of us are shockingly bad at taking care of it. We forget to feed it well, we run it into the ground with work, We override its signals until it breaks down completely. And sometimes I think that we would never treat a pet the way we treat our bodies. So here's a challenge for you this week. Not a big one, just this one thing. Go water something, pet something, sit next to something green for 5 minutes, and notice what your brain does. Then immediately pick up the phone and schedule a doctor's appointment for your yearly checkup. And if you're not convinced that you should take care of your body in order to take care of your brain, well, then check this video next, where I talk how different body systems translate to brain function.